in Forest Hills, as I suspect a lot of you are watching this from your homes, and I think that's a good thing. I just got back from Washington on Friday. We were there to make sure we could approve the third stimulus package, some $2 trillion that's going out. Most importantly, this is a healthcare crisis, and there's nothing more important than getting out resources to our healthcare, their PPE, and the ventilators, the equipment they need to do their jobs so that they don't get sick and that they can assist people. I was outraged, as I think most Americans were, to learn that President Trump actually gave our stockpile of PPE, masks, gowns, and the like, to China after he already was warned of the fact that this was also coming to the United States. He did this literally a couple days after the impeachment vote. And when people were wondering why the stockpile has been depleted, it's all sitting over in China, even though the president knew this was coming our way. And I think right now is not the time to have that debate, but in the postmortem of this, a lot of this is going to come to light. I have tried to keep the constituents in our district informed. I've put out 3 e-newsletters. Last week we had a teletown hall meeting on the coronavirus, and just for everyone's information, this Thursday we will be holding another teletown hall. On our last one, we had over 11,000 people on the line. We will be calling all phone numbers in the 18th Congressional District. We're going to have someone from the SBA there to let small business people understand the programs. Some are grants, some are low interest loans, how they work, how do you apply for them, how best to use them. I heard Ed Gainey talking about some of these small mom and pop shops in his district. I think it'd be important for them to understand this process. We're also going to have Senator Costa's agreed to bring someone from the Department of Labor and Industry to talk about the unemployment compensation. As you know, we expanded this to include independent contractors and self-employed individuals. These are people that are not traditionally eligible for unemployment compensation, and they need to know how they can apply, what documents they need to have in order to be considered. We also plussed up these unemployment benefits by $600 a week. So on top of whatever the state benefit would be for an individual, they will also get an additional $600. I think this is the difference for a lot of people on whether or not they can afford to continue their health care. So we think that's very important. There is a one-time payment for individuals who make less than $75,000 or couples that make less than $150,000, although it scales up to $99,000 for an individual where it eventually phases out, and $199 for couples. You have to be a filer. So if you're someone who didn't make enough money to file a federal tax return, you need to file one now. And when you do so, I would advise you to sign up for direct deposit. Those who have filed a tax return, whether it's 19 or 18, if you haven't filed yet, that's not a problem. They'll go on your 18 income. If you have direct deposit, you can expect your check in about 2 to 3 weeks. If you don't have direct deposit, this could take months for you to get your check in the mail. So it's important that people who haven't filed, if you're on Social Security or disability, or maybe your income was such that you just didn't make enough money to file a federal tax return, you need to do that and you need to sign up. We're going to have all that information at the teletown hall. We are trying to keep people informed by way of our e-newsletter. If you are not on my e-newsletter list, it's doyle.house.gov. The first thing that will pop up is sign up for my e-newsletter. I would encourage you to do that. As you know, I have had the pleasure of representing this district for 13 terms now, 26 years. It is the entire city of Pittsburgh and over 50 suburban communities directly around the city of Pittsburgh. Like Jay had mentioned, Democrats have not been in charge of Congress for a lot during my tenure, but when we were, back in the 2007 to 2010 period, I helped write the Green Building Act.
Congressman, we're having a little trouble hearing the tones, but we're at 3 minutes here.
Yeah, it's hard to describe a 26-year career in 3 minutes, but I guess
I understood.
Questions. I just want people to know that during my tenure in Congress, We have fought hard to uphold our democratic values, and that this district has a progressive Democrat in this district and a voting record to prove it. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
And as we have before, well, here's a question in the chat. So we'll begin with this, and anybody who has further questions can raise their hand or put them into the chat. And so the question here is, do you support the Betsy DeVos COVID-19 proposal for micro grants, which is a voucher program? Pam Harbin says.
Well, first and foremost, I don't support any voucher programs. We are woefully underfunding public education in our country and here in our state. And before I would ever support any voucher programs, I would need to see public education fully funded. I can't imagine there's anything Betsy DeVos is for that I would support.
We'll ask that question when we come around to the next speaker also. I don't see any other questions. Oh, here we go. Kathy Smith has a question.
Yeah, hi, Mike. My question is about the funding that's coming to individuals. So my understanding is if someone does not file a tax return, like you said, they could still file it if they had income. But what about people? So people who do not have any income that requires a tax return to be filed will not get the money. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's why you have to file. Even if you weren't required to file a federal tax return because you didn't make enough income to have to file one, you still need to go online and file. Go onto irs.gov and file a return. Make sure that you have your name and social security. You have to have a social security number when you fill that tax form out, and make sure to sign up for direct deposit. Give them a routing number and your bank account number. That way you can get the check in 2 to 3 weeks. You're all eligible. Everybody's eligible. It makes less than $75,000, whether they filed or whether they had a tax liability or not, but you have to file in order to get the money. So
is there any kind of outreach being done to people in poor communities to let them know that that's an option for them?
Yeah, I sent an e-newsletter out to 260,000 emails, and we've done our teletown halls too, and we're getting information out. We're working with our delegation, our state delegations and local delegations to try to get this word out. It's very important that people understand, and this is what I worry about, some of the people who need this the most. And we should understand, by the way, the Republicans did not want to give a check to these people. They said if you didn't owe taxes, you didn't file a return, they didn't want to give that money. We fought them and successfully kept this provision in the bill. I should also tell you that every single Republican senator voted against the $600 additional payment on the unemployment compensation too. So these are things that Democrats fought hard for. Speaker Pelosi was adamant that we were not going to let a bill come from the Senate that didn't have these provisions in it, or we were just going to pass our own bill. She got criticized by the administration for trying to delay the process, but it was her delay and her putting forward a Democratic bill in the House that forced the issue over in the Senate and got us these benefits we have today. So I think that's important, but I can't stress enough, you have to file a return if you want to get a check, that $1,200 check, and I would encourage people to sign up for direct deposit so that you can get that check in 2 to 3 weeks instead of months.
Okay, and that's the 2018 return, correct?
Yeah, if you haven't filed a 2019 return, they'll look at your 2018 return.
Right.
So that'd be fine. But know this also, in 2021, when you file your taxes, they're going to look at your 2020 income. And if your 2020 income is maybe less than what you had on your 19 or 18 return, maybe you didn't qualify because your income was $100,000. And then when you file your 2020 taxes, because of what's going on with the coronavirus, your income goes below $75,000, you'll be eligible for that tax credit of $1,200. Conversely, if you qualified, say you made $70,000 a year as an individual and you qualified for the $1,200, and in 2020, your income exceeds $100,000, you're going to have to rebate that $1,200. Now it slides the scale from 75 to 99, but they're going to base whether or not you get that money, whether you have money coming back to you in the form of a tax credit, or whether you're due to give a little bit of that back based on what your 2020 income is. And they won't know that till you file your tax return in 2021.
Thank you, Congressman. The next question comes from the chat. This is from Edward Wren. For both candidates, what are your thoughts about ethane cracker plants in the Ohio Valley?
Well, I think that these plants need to have the strictest regulations that we can put on them. We all have concerns about the health effects of these plants in our air and our water. I am very much in favor of reinstituting some of the environmental laws we had over the Obama administration that the Trump administration has rolled back. I also think that people who live in these areas should have a greater say-so about what is located in the areas where they live. In the Clean Futures Act, which is a bill that we are working on in the Energy and Commerce Committee to get us to net zero carbon by 2050, which is what the IPCC scientists are telling us we must do. There is a section in that bill that gives greater authority and power to localities to have a greater say-so over the siting of plants of this nature in their communities. And I think that that's only right that take place. So as far as the plastics industry go, I favor banning single-use plastic. That is not something that I think we should be doing. There are some beneficial uses for plastics in making vehicles and other things lighter and more efficient, helping us with our carbon footprint. So we can't totally ban the plastics industry, but I think we should reconsider these single-use plastics. I think they should be banned, and I think there should be strict environmental laws on these types of industries.
Thank you. Miriam?
Hi. Hi, Mike. My question is more along the lines about fracking and your thoughts about the fracking industry in the state of Pennsylvania and specifically in Western Pennsylvania, pros and cons, and also how you see how we will transition to renewable energy in this area.
Thank you. I really appreciate that question because this is something I'm working very hard on. Let's look at what our makeup is now. Fossil fuels make up about 63% of our energy generation, and renewables make up about 18%. Nuclear makes up about 20%. Natural gas is about 38% of that. Now, over the last 10 years, coal has dropped from almost 70% of our energy generation down to 24%. This is really due to the fact that natural gas became cheap and has a much lower carbon footprint. In fact, most of the power section emission reductions that we've realized over the years has been as we have switched away from coal to natural gas. Now, remember, in the power sector, we're only talking about 1/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions. It's 1/3 of the problem. But we have to decarbonize the power sector. And in able to do that, we're going to have to double the amount of electricity that we use for things like electric vehicles, electric stoves, electric heaters. And in order to do this and reduce fossil fuels, we're going to have to add 28 to 37 gigawatts of clean energy every year. Now let's put that in perspective. In the best years ever, peak year for renewables, we did about 5 gigawatts, and in nuclear, the best we ever did in a year was 7 gigawatts. So we need to move away from fossil fuels, and how do we do that? Two things that I'm working on are going to help us lessen the amount of fossil fuels we need as we raise renewables. One of them is energy storage. We have to take care of the intermittency of renewables, and one of the ways to do this is to be able to store this energy so that we can use it when we need it, as opposed to when it's produced. Sometimes we produce renewable energy, but the demand isn't there. Sometimes the demand is there, but the renewables aren't producing. So one of the ways to do this is through energy storage. I have a bill which I have authored, I'm the prime sponsor of, which provides a tax credit for the development of long time storage of energy. That's one way to get more renewables on the grid, less fossil fuels on the grid. Another thing I'm working on is these advanced nuclear reactors. These are small 60 megawatt reactors that can be turned on and off very easily, much safer than current nuclear technology, that allows us to pair them with renewables on the grid, so that when the renewables are producing energies, these small little 60 megawatt units are not on. But when the renewables aren't producing energy and there's demand, they click on and provide the energy. So this is how we, over a period of time, will reduce the need for fossil fuels and eventually reduce the need for natural gas. My fear about this, an arbitrary banning of fracking in a year or 5 years, is that if we don't have the capacity to replace that power on the grid, two things will happen. Number one, when you do this, natural gas prices go up. When you stop the production of it, this hurts a lot of low income and middle income communities. But more importantly, it makes coal viable again as a fuel that now becomes cheaper than natural gas. And my fear is that some countries, remember, this is global warming we're talking about, will go back to that coal option. So we don't want to see that happen. I think over time, and the other thing in the fracking industry as we speak today, almost 50% of the wells are not producing right now. There's a glut of natural gas, and that industry is actually on the downturn, not on the upturn. But I am totally committed over time to make sure that we are replacing fossil fuels from our power sector to renewables. And the way we do that is with these technologies that I'm supporting. We have the Clean Futures Act, which it mirrors the IPCC report. We want to get to net zero carbon by 2050 or sooner if certain technologies give us the ability to do that. I am a senior member of that committee. I will be someone helping to write that bill. I have worked with the Sierra Club and other environmental groups that have been to my office to talk about these issues. We continue to dialogue. And in this district, you have a member of Congress that is going to be one of the people that has a seat at the table as we get to work to make sure that we get where we need to get before the scientists say that, we need to keep that 1.5 degrees Celsius. We can't go higher than that. And I am totally committed to doing that.
Okay, we have one more question. We're well over our 2 minutes, but have been trying to be a little, allow a little more time. So of course, when Professor Dickinson comes on, we'll take a little extra time with him on the questions too.
Sure.
For equity. So Cliff's hand has gone down.
That was me. That was me. Cliff, go ahead.
Okay.
Hi, actually, this is Nora. Cliff is sitting here right by me. Here he is. Okay. But my question for you, Representative Doyle, is this. I really like your comments especially about the storage solutions. I just want to remind you that the enormous build out of the petrochemical industry in Pennsylvania, spreading now or has been spreading until the downturn that you just referenced, that has all been about the production of plastic. It has not been about the production of energy to heat people's homes. So we have our cracker plant out here in Monaca. I guess they're paused for the COVID virus. Got to give them credit. Finally, they did that under a great deal of pressure. The whole point of that plant, as you know, is to produce millions of tons of plastic every year. And as you know, and you referenced too, that we got to slow that down very much. So what we need is a vision as to what kind of manufacturing we are going into. We can't just shut everything petrochemical down without a robust vision of the kind of manufacturing we want and who it is actually going to benefit, right? And so I would like to have your thoughts about a just transition to a new sustainable future.
And I think that's very important. Any plan that shuts down assets or shuts down industries or displaces large amounts of people from the way they feed their families is not going to have the public support we need to build to be able to move forward towards a net zero carbon world by 2050. And part of that transition you talked about is important. I think we saw that graphically in West Virginia when coal was the so-called war on coal, which really was the cheap price of natural gas, started to displace a lot of coal miners. And there was really no viable alternative for them to work. We told them we were going to make them into coders. Well, weren't many people applying for coding jobs in West Virginia. And when I first got elected to Congress, that was a state that every single elected official in that state was a Democrat. That is a totally red state now, with the exception of Senator Manchin, who could be described as a purple senator at this point. So I think it's graphic need. So what do we do here in the Mon Valley, and what do we do up the Ohio River Valley to change that? Well, I would submit to you that one of the things we do is the technologies that are going to come on board to help us be carbon free are things that could be built and manufactured here in our area. For instance, the global scientists, the gold standard for scientific research, has told us that we still need to have carbon capture technology for other countries in the world, because there is going to continue to be coal and other fossil fuels used, and there's no way to get the net zero carbon without carbon capture technologies. I'd like to see those technologies and those instruments to be retrofitted into these plants in other countries, manufactured here in what they formerly called the Rust Belt, in these areas of West Virginia and Eastern Ohio and Western Pennsylvania and all the way up through to Michigan, to provide employment and manufacturing and what becomes materials that are going to be used to help us decarbonize the world, not just the United States and Western Pennsylvania. I think that as we start to build and invest more money in renewables, and I'm for taking away every single penny of subsidies going to fossil fuels and putting them exclusively into renewables. And as we start to build more renewable plants, they need to be located in these areas where people are being displaced. They also need to be jobs that can pay out family sustaining wage. The fact of the matter is in the industries that you're talking about now, those wages are mostly all union jobs with pensions and benefits, and they're making between $80,000 and $100,000 a year. When you look at the average wage in the solar industry, it's $28,000 a year. So we need to upgrade those positions too. And we need to see if we can get some of our union brothers and sisters that are in the core of our party too, to work with these new factories as we start to build them. We need to invest in a carbon-free energy technology, and we need to do it. It's global. It's not just for our region. A lot of the research on things like energy storage and other things are being done right here in Pittsburgh at Carnegie Mellon University and University of Pittsburgh. If we want to transition and have a just transition, it's got to be creating jobs. People don't want the government to send them a check. People want the dignity of a job that they can go to every day and support their families. So when we talk about just transition, it's not just universal basic income where we say, well, your job has been displaced, therefore we're just going to mail you a check every month. That's not how most Americans that I know want to go forward with their families. They want a job and they want to be able to contribute to the society. And the way to help them do that is let's build these technologies that China's going to need, that India's going to need, that Russia's going to need. These are big carbon emitters. Germany using coal, got rid of all their nuclear and went to coal, and now they've got all this health problems. We can help solve those problems and build those industries in these areas where people are transitioning from the fossil fuel economy to the clean economy. That's what I want to help happen.
This is Abby. I'm so sorry to cut you off. I'm in the unfortunate position of being the timekeeper here. I think we do need to move on, and my apologies to everyone. We're sort of doing our best.
Well, let me just say thank you, and I'll go off. But it's something I'm passionate about. I hope you all realize that. I'm totally committed for my children and grandchildren and all of yours. That we move to a clean economy, and I will be working on that diligently. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to all of you. I ask for your vote and support today. You can be assured when I go back to Washington, I'll be working hard on all of your behalf. So thank you for doing this today.